Hello, and welcome to Karmatalks, a monthly video podcast dedicated to yoga studio owners. My name is Julia, and I'm a content manager of Karmasoft Online, a multifunctional and affordable yoga studio software. And I'm your host today. We are going to talk about many things today about what it takes to successfully transition from an in-person to online classes, as well as uh, what else has changed during the COVID. And it seems like it's a big journey, right? So we're gonna talk about and a lot of different details that our beautiful guest is going to uncover. Let me introduce our guest. Hello, Lori.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Happy to be here. Thank you.
So our guest is Lori Berenz. Lori is a certified Iyengar yoga teacher and the director of Yoga Journey Collingwood. She has been studying with senior Iyengar yoga teachers since 1998. Over the years, Lori's love of yoga inspired her to focus on teaching yoga and leave behind her corporate career of 15 years. So here we are. Lori, how's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good. I hope, weathered through the worst of this pandemic that we're currently living through, and hopefully come out of on the other side wiser and more compassionate.
Excellent. Yes. Well, your yoga studio is called Yoga Journey, and I'm sure that it's been the yoga journey has been affected by this pandemic. Yes.
Yes, definitely. I started Yoga Journey many years ago, actually in 2009 when we first lived in Markham, Ontario. And then we moved to Collingwood just over 6 years ago. And for a while, I taught as a freelance teacher before I decided to open up a space. And so I picked the name way back in 2009, Yoga Journey, because that's really what it meant to me. And this past year feels like a whole journey unto itself, just in the 1 year.
Exactly. I do agree with you. I feel the same way. Exactly. And so like in all areas of your life, it's a completely new journey that we embarked on unexpectedly. Great. And I love the
Hmm.
name, by the way. I think it's a brilliant name, like beautiful.
Well, thank you. I was thinking about Yoga Marga, which basically means yoga path, but that URL was taken. So I used the English version instead and got the URL, but that was back in 2009. So
Wow, that's like destiny, it's like it's chosen you. Perfect. Well, that I usually call it magic. That's what we get, right? Magic.
yes,
We're
yes.
in tune with the universe. So I have a question for you. Let's start with your transition from in person to online classes. How did it go, and what have you learned?
Wow. The first, I'll be totally honest, the first probably 2 months was very stressful because you had to learn so many different things. The Zoom platform, I did a few Facebook Lives that I lost my internet connection. It was a complete disaster. I was sweating through every pore in my body, just, so stressed out. And then I kind of took a deep breath and said, it's yoga. And it's not meant to be so hard. And so I got some help, friends and family and other colleagues were very helpful in sharing their experience, their information, and I got my act together. And so I was also thankful that Karmasoft had the option to start the online class via Zoom. That made things very seamless for me, and their email function helped me just to send out the link to the students. So all of the things helped to kind of put it together. And it's amazing looking back now where it's very seamless, and I just start the class and by magic, the Zoom screen appears, how stressed out I was about it. But it was, I think it was being thrown into something so quickly and having a little bit of resistance. So when I moved from Markham, originally my students were like, well, could you do a YouTube channel or teaching? And I'm like, nah, video's not my thing. I really don't want to be on a camera. I'm only really like wanting to teach in person. I'd never really done a yoga video. And so there was some resistance there for myself. And so I had to overcome that and found it was such a great way to connect with the students, because I have had over the past year, it's been over a year now, emails from students saying that this was like a lifesaver for them during their most difficult time in the pandemic, when they were feeling isolated. And so that to me was worth it. All the stress and struggle was worth it.
Yes, that's interesting that you say that you had this, that you didn't want to be on the camera, and how you overcame that stress and struggle, because it seems like now you've been quite successful with all the videos, and
yeah, it was kind of like responding
video on demand. So you signed up for video on demand. So that means you've really mastered it.
It's a work in progress. I'm much more open-minded about trial and error, and just trying to create a service that's of use to people. So I'm constantly asking the students, what do you want to see more of? What do you want to see less of? And I teach, usually an Iyengar class is 1.5 to 2 hours. So we really ask for a commitment from the students. And so I did these 30-minute recordings so that the students could have a quick go-to for, if they wanted to focus on their hips or lower back or their feet or shoulders, or just like an overall quicker practice that they could infuse into the day. And so I've been doing a lot of that, and some pranayama recordings, so focusing on the breath. And I actually found, interestingly enough, pranayama, which is a very quiet, restorative practice, focusing on the breath, was one of the best things that translated on video, because they're in their own space. They're not distracted by other students if, they're sneezing or coughing or moving around. And I actually end the class by leaving them in Shavasana, so they don't have to get disturbed and get up and get into their car. And so the feeling, or the after effects, the afterglow of pranayama, I feel stays with them longer now, which is quite a pleasant surprise for me.
That's an interesting revelation. I didn't know that. That's very interesting that it can be, it's a good insight, I think, for other yoga studio owners, because I'm sure there's been a demand for this kind of things, of pranayama and breathing and all that. And if it works on the video, it's quite, inspiring, and it's quite uplifting. So did you have a good feedback about it?
Yes, I have a weekly pranayama class, and I've seen students really embrace it, where it can be like the kind of the non-active part of the practice. So sometimes there's some reluctance to it, but I felt very deeply that this practice of pranayama was something we needed so much during this time of unrest, where our nervous systems were constantly being bombarded with news and information, and feeling like, meeting someone on the street was going to potentially cause harm for us. So I really wanted to maintain that. And I'm glad, not everybody is going to be a convert, but my students are, I even said, I'll back it up and make it more bite-sized chunks for you. And they've responded really well.
That's very interesting, because I do know a few people who can't, unplug, who could have benefited from, having new opportunities in terms of building new habits, right? Like switching, finding something else. Because if you have something else, like these little sessions, these little pranayama, how do you call them? Sessions?
Classes, practices.
Yeah. So I think it can help empower people to just you know, not be addicted to the news, because I know a few people who can't, you know, they can't help themselves.
Yeah, I've been thinking about like the elderly, especially because they've been so, you know, contained and sitting at home watching the news, just sitting there, like just, you know, and I feel so even scientifically, it's proven that if you regulate your breath and slow it down, so each breath is a count of 5. So each inhale and exhale, you count 5, and you do 5 of those, and maybe you pause a little bit at the very end of the exhalation. That your nervous system already starts to deregulate. So it's actually scientifically proven to be that way.
Oh, that's excellent, excellent. No, I'm so happy that you guys are doing it, and it's working. Obviously, there's a demand for it, and also you mentioned that you've created all those quick to go uh, yoga lessons that they can be infused into the day. What was the feedback about those? Did people like it? Like your students?
Yeah, they really did. They felt it was much more manageable because they were very honest. Hey, I don't have an hour and a half every day. And I've always been saying, like, do 10 minutes, do 15 minutes a day is much better than trying to crush in a 2-hour practice only once or twice a week, because it's that like water dripping on a stone. It's that constant practice that's going to keep them engaged in the practice. And if you pick it up every day, it's much easier to progress from where you left it off rather than leaving it for a few days. So yeah, they really appreciated it. And during the videos, I often say, like, just do this pose and stop the video. You know, you can go back to it because they have access to the online library 24/7. So, you know, I said, just take a screenshot of the pose that you like and just do that. So don't even play the video in the background as much, because I think some of us are like over zoomed out or over videoed out. So I said, just like look at the video, take a couple screenshots of the poses you want to do. And I've even had some students print them out and make a little booklet so that they have like their go-to poses to study. And that was kind of my incentive for doing this in the beginning, was just to get them to practice anything.
That sounds very effective. And so with video on demand, are they able to say, for example, I go to the beach and I want to do a 15-minute yoga class on the beach. Can I do that with video on demand? So I just turn it on, that's it?
That's it. Yep. It's, what I've done is I have a monthly membership. So students that have the monthly membership have access to the videos ongoing, and I load in probably 5 to 6 new classes every week. So there's fresh content all the time. And yeah, it's just, and I've got it. I love the way you can categorize it. So I've got like 30-minute practice, pranayama, yoga for healthy hips. That's always a really popular one. Hips are really popular. And so the students can easily scroll down. Yoga for healthy hips.
Oh, for healthy hips. Okay, I get it. That's interesting. I like that. Healthy hips. So it's one of the most popular ones.
Yes, it is. And it's really just like, it's almost like teaching yoga for runners or yoga for golf. It's still yoga. You're just kind of framing it in a way that is going to get someone to go, oh, I want to golf, or I run and I want to, you know, recover from the running. And so it's really yoga asana. It's not like we're creating something. It's just that the sequences are developed to target certain areas.
That's amazing. I like it a lot because, for example, for me, but lately I've been feeling that my neck and shoulders are overloaded and I've been sitting in not comfortable positions. So I specifically target this area of my body. And I feel like, okay, I do this for 15 minutes and then maybe if I have time, I'll do the full body stretch. And I think this targeting thing is working quite well. I'm happy that you guys are doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just something, patterns that I saw in the students. Like I would notice, say, if you're going to extend your arms in Urdhva Hastasana, sometimes people would be like this, or, you know, and I would say, okay, what's your range of motion, right? And let's work on that. And so I can see, and that's the beauty of teaching in person for sure, because we can see people in 3D, and I was missing that. But then really looking at the screen and going, oh, I can see, you know, that that student's having an issue with their knee, or when they raise their arms, they can't quite get them straight. So let's deconstruct that and take a look at how we can back it up. Because, you know, why bother going into downward dog if you're just going to kind of hunt over your shoulders, right? That's not going to be beneficial.
That's
so
true.
how can we back it up in a way that's going to serve the individual body? So some of the students, I teach mostly all levels. So some of the students are doing full Adho Mukha Svanasana, full dog pose, and others are doing a chair at the wall or halfway using blocks under their hands or something like that, depending on what I'm seeing. So it's been good. It's been a pleasant surprise teaching online.
Excellent. Well, I'm excited that this feature, video on demand, is working quite well for you. It sounds like you're taking the full advantage.
Yes, yeah, it's great, and the students love it. They just they were like, "Wow, this is awesome," because it takes it to a whole other level. So I'm thinking of when I go back in the studio. One of the lessons that I learned over COVID is that it's really hard as a yoga teacher to establish a business, a studio, a community where it's primarily drop-in students. And so, I have the advantage of living in a smaller town. So a lot of people know each other. They want to be in a class with their friends, their colleagues. And so I created, when we were open for a small period of time from September to January or December, when we were allowed to open a studio during the pandemic, I created a yoga pod or a yoga bubble of the same students that had their space for each class. So if your time was Tuesday at 9:30, you're with your colleagues. If you were Friday at 10 o'clock, and so you travel through the week with that same pod. And it was one of the silver linings of COVID because the students commit. I had them commit to an 8-week series, and you know that you're going to have X amount of students coming. And sometimes with drop-in, you could have 4, you could have 15, you could have 3, you could have 9, you could have 1, and you're kind of like not knowing how many students are just going to drop in whenever they do. And the students loved it because it held them accountable. They were like, I paid for these lessons up front. And I thought about it like if you have a kid and you schedule them into like a swimming class, you pay for the 10 lessons. And if you miss 2, that's just the way it is. But now with this video on demand, the beauty is, you know, if Susan can't make it to class, then they've got the videos. So when I go back in studio, the people that purchase their pod or their bubble are also going to have access to my online videos to also incentivize them to work in their practice throughout the week. If they take like only 1 class with me, or if they take 2 classes, they'll have the video classes to refer to as well.
Mm-hmm. So it's a bit less pressure.
Yeah, and you know, if there's a snowstorm, as you know, we get snowstorms. If there's a snowstorm or a personal emergency or something like that, then you can you have something else that you can refer to that they can still keep the students practicing, and you know, you don't have to stress. I'm sure, like many yoga teachers out there, you've taught a class when you didn't feel 100%, when you know there was some burning issue, and perhaps in that case your energy is not great for the class, and maybe that's not a great time to be teaching. So now we have these other resources available to us.
Excellent. I agree 100%, because some days you plan, you will be feeling great, and then something happens. Maybe you ate something wrong, right? Just I think it happened to me. I ate something wrong the next day. I didn't feel well. I didn't know what was happening, and I think I just ate something wrong. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to plan.
Yeah, it's life, right?
Yeah, exactly, it's life. It's life. I wished it was always smooth and we were always in the flow, but sometimes things happen, right?
Yeah, and yoga teaches us to search that balance, right? To take that middle path and to find a way to work that creates a balance there.
Yeah, that's true. Well, talking about balance, as a yoga studio owner, it's important to have this balance that you just mentioned, to be efficient. And in your bio, it says that you understand the challenges of balancing family, career, and yogic practices. You are a mother of a 16-year-old, and you're also on the board of Iyengar Yoga Association of Canada. So I have a feeling that you're quite good at handling all of those, like juggling all of the important things in your life.
Yeah, it's been challenging, and I was on the board of the association. I'm now in the professional development committee meeting, so I'm still very involved in the association. But I also volunteer locally. I'm a vegan, and I like to grow my own food, and I care very much about the environment. I think yoga has helped me fall in love with Mother Nature in a new way, a different way, and so I also volunteer for a climate change group here locally in town. So I feel like if you want to make a change, you have to also step up and get active in communities to do that. So that balance of community service and home life, family life, as well as being professional and teaching and being engaged just in community here is one of the joys of living in a small town. I absolutely adore the local Collingwood community that we have, and we do anything to support and nurture that. And one of the things I think that's most important to me in all of that is taking the time to practice every day something, because otherwise I find if I'm pulled in so many different directions, I start to feel depleted. And then in me, that shows up as kind of feeling resentful, like that people are taking my time, or I don't have time for myself. We have, two very busy dogs, an active family life. My son is 16, and, there's different demands and things like that come with that. And also balancing the workload and the chores at home. My husband's very, very supportive of me and the studio and the family and the home life. And just my work this year really has been setting boundaries and learning to say no. I'm not very good at that. That's a work in progress for me, but I know that's a key part of the balance.
I like how you always challenge yourself.
I've done one of those profiles online, and it says I'm a learner. So I think that's one of my top skills. So I think I'm constantly searching on things to learn and improve. And that's what I loved about yoga, it was this depth of ability to learn. That was my first love affair with yoga. I could be a lifelong student. Finally, I found something.
Excellent. Yes. Well, that's a dream. Sounds like a match. A perfect match. And I want to say that, yes, dogs are always fun. They do take time, don't they?
They do.
Yeah.
They do. Sometimes my morning routine, I love to do my pranayama practice in the morning, but, if the dogs are there, they need to be walked. I have to reschedule certain things. But, if you really put your mind to it, you can make it work one way or another. It might not be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that's awesome. Well, you mentioned that you are a learner, and I have a question. What is one failure you had as a yoga studio owner, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, so I think rather than failure, I would say like a lesson learned. Again, kind of going back to that learner piece, but definitely when I was new as a teacher, I wanted to please everybody. Again, not having a lot of really good boundaries or principles around those. And so my students would be like, "Hey, Lori, could we have a class on Sunday mornings? Hey, Lori, we'd really like an evening class." And I'd be like, "Absolutely, let me put that in the schedule." And, this was back when my son was really young. So Sunday morning was family time. And I was like, kind of sacrificing or making a decision to teach rather than do that family time. And, the first week you get 7 students and they were all keen, and then it would dwindle. And here I am still with this class on my schedule. and or same thing with the evening. You know, it was an evening class, and so it wasn't a time I could put my son to bed as I like to do, and et cetera, et cetera. And so I just learned now that I'm really in charge of the schedule, and that if a student is committed enough, they'll find a way to make it work. Because for years, I drove from the suburbs into the city of Toronto. It took me sometimes an hour and a half to get to class because I really wanted to practice and I wanted to learn. And so, you know, I understand there's obstacles and barriers to learning, but I also feel like I'm more in control of the schedule, and I'm not going to just go with the whims and the, you know, wishes and dreams of a few students. I want to really vet it out. Okay, is a Sunday morning a thing? And let's try it. I'll give it a try. And now with the pre-scheduled registered classes, you can say, okay, I'll open it up, but you're registering for 8 weeks. And that really, you know, puts the pedal to the metal. If they're really going to make the decision, they have some skin in the game then.
Well, that's awesome. Well, so it seems like this kind of schedule works well for you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's been a very much trial and error over a long period of time, but yes.
Well, great. So it really was about the challenge was to set the boundaries and just to kind of have this to figure out how to make it work for both of you, right? For the students and for yourself, to honor their interests and yours, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I definitely pull the students, and sometimes with these pods, I got a group of people that were always my morning students, and they started coming in the afternoon. And they're like, wow, this really works for us. We love it. So I always am working with, you know, in line with their schedules and in consideration of that. But I also have to look at the fact that I'm running a studio and there's administration that's involved in it. I'm the only person doing it. So I have to have some administrative time during the week in order to meet my commitments. And sometimes students will very casually say, oh, well, you could just add another class to the schedule. Like, no problem, right? And COVID has also taught me that there's actually a lot that goes on behind the class to the schedule. There's the organizing, the sequencing, the planning, the actual teaching of it. And so it's never like just that hour and a half that you're teaching. It's all the things that lead up to it. And so always kind of taking that into consideration. And now I feel like I've got a really good schedule that works for the students. And I'm very connected to the students. Again, we're a small community here, and even ones that are abroad. And the great thing about Zoom is that some of the students I had in Markham found me, and they're now, you know, taking classes with me 6 years later. So they were just like searching, is she teaching online? And oh yeah, she's teaching online. And I have a couple of students that only can practice to the video recording because of their schedule. And so I will have a Zoom call with them, check in with them, see how they're doing, any questions, and I will communicate regularly through email, you know, so that it's not like I feel it's just going out in cyberspace and I don't have a relationship with that person because it's video based.
That's a good point. I like that. I like how you approach this virtual relationships. You still want to make it personal, and you still want to make that personal touch to keep the to create this intimacy without, you know, being close with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, like, it's time consuming, but it's so much a part of being a yoga teacher. I like to refer to myself as a teacher rather than an instructor. I know it's just semantics, but to me, being a teacher means that you have a relationship with somebody, and it's just kind of the way I am as a person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that sounds awesome. This is a good style. I think it's a great approach to your practice and teaching and yoga journey. Yes, you make the real journey. I mean, for your students even, right? They're not just watching some random videos online. They're on their journey to where they want to be, to where they want to get. with their practice, and along the way they have your help.
Yes, and that's what I say. This is your yoga. This is your yoga. That you're doing is your yoga. I'm just kind of facilitating the transference of the information. And I will say that my students are, they're great, they're exceptional, they're really keen to learn. They're also, I think, learners. So they're not necessarily stretching their hamstring muscles and that's their goal. They're looking to learn, what is this yoga? What is yoga? What is this yoga? What is my yoga? What are we doing in yoga? And sure, they may come to me first because they have tight hips or hamstring muscles and we work on that. But there's also something that goes on in the background. And that's what I think keeps them coming back.
Great. What a journey. So on your beautiful yoga journey, what is the best yoga item you recently bought?
So I would have to say it's two things. One is we have something in Iyengar Yoga called a trestler or a horse. And it's kind of like what you would see in gymnastics or like a hurdle bench. So what it does is it kind of frames you, and you can do standing poses inside, inversions, back bends. If someone has had a hip replacement, for example, or has an issue with their knee and they can't necessarily do all the weight bearing work, or if they're pregnant and they need some support in the standing poses, if they have some misalignment in their legs or they want to really penetrate into the spine more deeply, we can kind of frame them in this trestler and give them the opportunity to practice along with the rest of the class, as well as make sure that they're practicing safely, deeply, and in a way that's actually going to heal them and make them better. And for advanced practitioners, the horse, the trestler can really challenge in inversions and back bends and things like that. So it's for like the mild, the medium, and the intense practice. And then the second was at the studio where I'm at in town. We're in an old home. It was built in the late 1800s. And I'm in the attic of the studio. So my walls are kind of like this before they hit the ceiling, which has been interesting in terms of using the walls as a prop. But I invested in a rope wall. So ropes are kind of ubiquitous to Iyengar Yoga, where we use the ropes as a system of traction and hanging upside down. So we start the students learning inversions on the ropes and standing poses and back bends and all kinds of things. It's great for the spine because we do, for example, downward dog with the rope around the hips, and you can get that traction of the hips up and the front body extending forward. And so I had to bring in an engineer to strap that to the wall. It was quite the undertaking. I brought the ropes home from India, my last visit there, but that's up, and I can't wait for the students to get back in studio and get into the ropes. They love the ropes. I love the ropes.
Excellent. So all these things that you bought, are they only for Iyengar Yoga?
Not necessarily. I mean, you need to know, I would think you need to study with an Iyengar Yoga teacher for some time to use the props effectively. But I know there are non-Iyengar studios that have ropes in place, for example. And I think in some ways the aerial silk yoga is ripping off a little bit what we've done with some of the ropes. So, but you know, it's a piece of equipment is only a piece of equipment unless you know how to use it. So if you study with an Iyengar teacher, and I know there's people out there that, you know, aren't Iyengar teachers that have these trestlers, and maybe it's for their own practice or maybe it's for, you know, where they're teaching others. But you have, it's like a piece of equipment. You need to learn how to drive it before it's going to have any value to you.
Yes.
And that tends to be in the Iyengar lineage, is where the teachings would come from.
That's very interesting. Yes, I wonder if other yoga studios will be interested in incorporating these beautiful items. Sounds like they're useful to me, but I've never seen them, so I'm curious.
I'll send you a few photos of the studio after, so you can see the things in action.
Yeah, it's a whole new world, this Iyengar Yoga. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, as I was saying, it's where all the props originally came from. So the belts, the
Uh-huh.
blocks, the bolsters, the blankets. So BKS Iyengar observed, he taught mainly Western students when he started teaching, and he observed that they couldn't put their bodies into the classical hatha yoga poses that he was teaching from. And so he looked at how he could get those bodies into those poses, and then in came the props. So he originally used cinder blocks and probably ropes and blankets from the bed and bolsters that they have traditionally in Indian households, and it just kind of built from there.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay.
Also, the rope system came from a picture BKS Iyengar saw of an ancient Hindu painting where a yogi was hanging upside down from a tree through a vine. And so he says, I didn't create them, I just kind of reintroduced them, the hanging ropes.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Interesting. So it's got it's got an interesting reference to it.
Mm-hmm.
Great. I mean, who would have thought? Yes, someone thinking about a tree, hanging off the tree. Yes, it's quite nice. Yeah. Great. Excellent. Well, I think we're close to wrapping up. Thank you so much for your time, Lori, and thank you for sharing your yoga journey. I feel like I was on a yoga journey with you during this conversation. And I hope everybody was feeling the same way too.
Thank you. That's very sweet. It was my pleasure.
Yes. So, to all of you who is watching us, thank you for your attention. And until next episode of Karma Talks, goodbye, and I will see you soon. Again, thank you, Lori.
Thank you.